In this next set of lessons, we're going to look at the tools available to us for editing the geometry inside of the scene. So we're starting with just a basic box inside the scene. And to get started, what we need to know are the parts and pieces that make up the geometry on our objects. The geometry that makes them up are going to be vertices at our points, the lines are our edges, and the gray spot is going to be our face, our polys. Now, to get access to these parts and pieces, we can right-click on the object. When we right-click on the object, we get our context menu, and in this menu, we have options to go into different modes. We can go into an edit edge mode, into a vertex mode, or into a face mode. In any one of these modes that we go into, when we go into them, we'll have to go back out through our object mode to get to the level that we're currently at. So let's get started just by taking a look at each one of these and how we can access them and then control them. So we can start with our vertex mode. I'm just going to hover over and let go of my right mouse button, and that's going to bring up the vertices. When I get nearby, it's going to highlight it so I can see it. I can select it by dragging a selection box or just left clicking on it to select it. When I select it, I can go and use a move tool, my rotate tool, or my scale tool to manipulate or to control those points. So by selecting that point, I can drag along each axis and begin to sculpt and shape the points inside of the scene. So I can also make a multiple selection of the vertices and then use other options such as the rotate and then rotate that selection. I can also scale that selection. Nice and simple. And that's how we can select the vertices, and then we can use our transform tools to actually maneuver and place those points around in the space. The next thing we can do is we can right click on our object again. We can go into our edge mode, and in edge mode it allows us to select the edges that make up our object. So I can left click to make a selection. Again, I can use my move tool to move in the different positions. I can also use my rotate tool to rotate one or multiple, and we'll select on these guys, and then we can rotate those points and those edges in space. And then we can also use our scale tool to scale those points, those edges. And if you want to add to your selection, just like at the object level, you can just hold shift and left click to add to that selection. And then you can do control left click to deselect from that selection. Alright, we're going to look at our last one. We'll right click and hold, and we'll hover over face, and now we're in our face mode. As we hover on top, it highlights the faces that are available to us on the object. We can left click to make a selection of the object, of that face, and then we can maneuver it just as before. We have that control for our move, for our rotate, and for our scaling. And this is our basic control for the vertex, for the edge, and for the face, using our move, our rotate, and our scaling. Next up, we're going to start looking at the other tools available to us, which are our mesh tools, our edit mesh tool, and our mesh tools right in here. We'll start going through each one of these. These tools are designed to give us more control over the geometry by creating and removing geometry inside of the object, and by doing so it gives us the ability to create the objects that we're trying to make. We have more geometry to be able to sculpt those shapes out, whether it's a helicopter or a person. What we have to do is have geometry to do that, and that's what these tools are going to provide us the ability to do, is to be able to add that geometry and take away that geometry while we're working on our models. Alright, we're going to start up on that next.